Welcome to At CCLI. I'm Paul Herman, and today our guests are Bryan and Katie Torwalt of Jesus Culture. Bryan and Katie, it is such an honor to have you guys here.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
So first, tell us your story. Tell us how you met.
Yeah, we met in 2006, actually at a worship school in Redding, California. I'm originally from Canada, Canadian, you know, don't really say that much, but we met on the last day of this worship school. It was like 150 people, and somehow we didn't see each other, and the very last day, she sang something, and I was like, whoa.
He approached me. He approached me afterward. He was real sweet, though.
Yeah.
Now, had you noticed him before, though?
No, actually,
No.
we genuinely never saw each other. It was a few weeks long, and we never ran into each other the whole time. The very last day, we met for the first time, and he asked me for my email address. This was in 2006, so we didn't have FaceTime, we didn't have, Skype was like just coming around, but we didn't know how to use Skype. So email. And it's a long story, we won't go into the whole thing.
She gave me a fake email address.
I gave him a non-working email address at the time. And we met again a couple weeks later, ran back into each other, and so it went from there. He got my phone number from there, and we ended up falling in love over the phone.
Over the phone. We dated long distance. From the time we met to the time we got married was 3 years.
Yeah.
And all of that was long distance, from me living in Canada and her in California.
Yeah.
But you first heard her sing.
I first heard her sing. That was the very first thing that drew me in.
Do you remember the song?
It was
I Need You More.
I Need You More in Spanish, randomly.
Ooh.
Yeah.
She's not fluent in Spanish, but she did know how to sing that song in Spanish.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
So random.
So random.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So how did you connect with Jesus Culture? Tell
That's
us
a good
about
question. So I did the School of Ministry at Bethel Church in Redding, and Jesus Culture originally came out of that church. Started as a youth ministry, and so I actually attended some of the youth conferences there when I was 14, 15 years old. The very first ones, like the song How He Loves, when that was recorded, I was there attending as a youth in the youth group. And so we became part through, I started leading at Bethel Church in Redding, and Kim Walker-Smith, who's a big part of Jesus Culture, mentored me and really spoke into my life and took time to pour into me. And so we became worship pastors at a church after we got married in Fresno, California, Central California, and started to write these songs for our church, just for our local church there. We had no idea that God would use them anywhere outside of that, but we wanted to make a CD and actually record them. And through our connection with Kim, she was like, we want to do the album for you guys. We want to pour into you guys and invest in this. And so that is how our relationship began with them. And our whole first album, they really were like, okay, we're going to do this. And that's where it started. Now we have 3 albums.
It was a couple years later we ended up feeling like we were supposed to be closer with Jesus Culture, and around that same time, Jesus Culture decided to plant a church. Banning Liebscher, the main pastor of Jesus Culture. And so that stirred something in our hearts, and so we ended up moving to Sacramento to be a part of a church plant, which is actually in Folsom, California, right east of Sacramento. And so we've been there now for a few years, and we love it. We love it. God's doing some amazing things.
Oh, that's great. So of all your songs in our CCLI database, it seems like all of them are ones you've written together. So is that by design?
It is, I think our first 2 albums, we have a 3rd album that just recently came out called Champion, where we ended up co-writing with a few other people, which has been really beautiful and amazing to us to get other people's influence. But the first couple albums, we wrote everything together. Some of it out of, we just didn't have access to other writers, but some of it was just what we were going through in life at that time, and just even being worship pastors at a local church and writing for our church and experiencing that. And so I would come up with something, or she would come up with something, and we'd always collaborate. Some of it came out spontaneously as we were leading in churches, and we would bring it back home and work on it together.
So is that process just a constant flow, or do you guys ever kind of step back from songwriting and take a break from it, or is it always just kind of always happening?
We would like to say that it's a constant flow.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
We've realized in the last little while that we love songwriting, and we want to continue to write songs for our whole life. And we do think that as you live life, the songs that come out from those seasons, sometimes it's easier because you've lived and you have something to say, and God's revealed a new part of himself to you. And so
Yeah.
I would say a lot of the albums did come around after a season of just figuring out more of who God is. And that was definitely inspiration for us. But we like to have it as a discipline also to
Both.
continue to write. We're never writing just for an album, but just to be writing what's on our heart. And so it's something that we're trying to always get better at. I would say.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
So your song Holy Spirit has been on our CCLI top 10 for probably the last few years. Tell us about that song. Tell us the story behind it, and just
Yeah, that song, it means a lot to us, and it's so incredible that the broad church has taken a hold of it. It's been so amazing. We wrote that at one of the first songs that we wrote while we were at our church in Fresno that Katie was just talking about. I had like a random old hymn that talked about the Holy Spirit stuck in my head on and off for probably 2 years. So prior to this, when we got married, she could say that I'd be in the shower and I'd randomly just be like singing the song, and it was really just like a prayer. It was a life prayer. It's like, Holy Spirit, we want you to be in our life. We want to be aware of what you're doing, kind of stuff. And so at one point in time we were talking, and as we were writing songs, we felt like we should write a song about the Holy Spirit. There's not that many songs that talk about the Holy Spirit that the church is singing right now, and write something for our generation. And not all of our songs have we ever been really intentional about, but this song happens to be one of the ones that we were pretty intentional about. Let's write a song about the Holy Spirit. And so it was a pretty short amount of time that we just sat down and began to write the chorus and the bridge, and it came out. And for us, the bridge is kind of what makes a song. It's let us become more aware of your presence, let us experience the glory of your goodness. And for us, it's an awareness of what Holy Spirit is doing, what God is doing in our lives in that moment in worship. And so
we had no idea that it would go even outside of our church, honestly. We wanted to record it. We felt like we wanted to put it on a CD, but we just never could have imagined what God would do with it.
And I was going to ask you, were you surprised?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. We're still surprised every time God takes it somewhere else, because like he was saying, I mean, I think that we didn't know that it would even reach the broader church, and we never thought it would, never in a million years thought I would hear that song on the radio. And then now to just be able to walk into different churches, different denominations, and hear them singing it, and it's just so beautiful. God's so faithful, and we wrote that song, it's been 6-7 years ago now, and so now he's still doing stuff with it. And we, even when we thought the season of however he was going to use it was over, it still had a whole nother life to it through other people, through other leaders and other artists. It's just been so cool for us.
And as writers, what are your thoughts when you hear other artists do it?
It's really amazing. Honestly, I think at first we felt like, this is our version or whatever. But as we've seen other people sing our songs, and then initially we were writing, we felt like we would love other churches to be singing them. And so that was always our heart, to have churches sing our songs, and then have other artists do them was even another thing where, as we began to hear them, it was really encouraging and special. Honestly, it felt honoring.
It did.
That someone would be impacted by a song that we wrote enough to put it on their record. And so it's been...
That's a huge honor for us, I would say. And I think we really did. When you're writing worship songs, the point is for other people to be able to sing them and connect to them. And it's supposed to touch them in a way that they feel like it's theirs. And that's what we wrote for when we wrote for our church, is we wanted to have songs. We would test out the songs before they ever came on the record, and to see, could people connect to this where they're at in their own life. And so to have an artist connect with it so much that they would record it and release it as their version of it, that for us, I mean, it's been so cool for us.
It's been cool too. A lot of the artists that have done any of our songs, we've actually become friends with over time. So even Francesca Battistelli, who ended up taking that song to radio, we've built some relationship with her, and with her and her husband, and it's been really amazing, and it's probably a relationship that we never would have had outside of that song.
And you probably get to hear the stories through her of how she's doing that song and how it impacts her audiences.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
There's another song that you wrote, God With Us. And I guess it was during a season where a mutual friend of ours had their infant daughter in ICU. Tell us about that whole experience.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. So we have a mutual friend from this area, Cody and Shannon Williams, and they have 4 little girls. Their youngest little girl, when she was born, she developed bacterial meningitis at 3 weeks old and was rushed to the NICU. It was very traumatic. She was having seizures. She had a really high fever. It was just really terrifying. I know anybody that's seen, especially that little of a baby, have any kind of sickness problem, it's very serious. So it was really scary, and over the period of a month, there was a lot of ups and downs, especially in the beginning. They didn't know how she'd respond to the antibiotics and different treatments that they were able to give her if she would survive. And so there was a moment in the hospital. We spent tons of time in the hospital with them. We're very close with their family, and they're like family to us. We happened to be home from some trips for some other stuff that we were going through, and God, He was just so faithful during that time. We were in the hospital room. I was in there one day specifically. I think it actually, we haven't told this part of the story before, but I think it was actually after she got a PICC line. And once again, that is just such a traumatic thing. And I remember being there for that and just feeling the presence of God in the room, but also seeing this, thing that we had no control over. Just a scary situation. And I started to sing this chorus, God with us, God for us, nothing could come against us, nothing could stand between us. And so simple, something I probably heard sung somewhere else a million times. But in that moment, I just felt like we needed that to sing over her. And I took it home to Bryan, and it actually was a song that we wrote. It started there, but it took another 1.5 years, almost 2 years to finish. To finish that song, because it meant so much to us. We didn't want to just add some verse that was a add-on type of thing. And so, I'll let you take it from there. But
I think for us, it just became a declaration, and we began to sing it in our church as we finished it. And it was something that like our community had walked through and seen the faithfulness of God. And their daughter is totally healed.
She's totally normal. She's totally healed.
3 years old and running around and wild and crazy. And so we saw God do a miracle. And so in the process of that, one of the lines in the bridge is where there was death, you brought life. And so it was a season where our church had gone through some losses and seen some amazing victories. And so everyone could kind of grab hold of that and declare it and make it their own. And it was a time where we saw a song really take hold of a community, which was so honoring and just felt so beautiful. And it's kind of the story of that, I guess. Yeah,
it really did. It felt like it first became a song for our community and our church. And it was one of those things, it was like a landmark moment where it was like, well, we're never, like Bryan said, we've seen some losses also. We haven't seen this every time, but we're never going to forget like how faithful you were in this. And this is something we're going to sing together in the midst of this and declare in the midst of this. And so it's been really fun. We're on tour actually right now, leading it. We got to lead it one specific time that God did something completely different with it. Totally different story. We were in Orlando actually, a couple weeks after some of the tragedies there, and just what's been going on in the world has just been crazy. And we got to sing that song, and it took on a whole new life. We got to sing it together. People were like joining hands together and singing, "God with us, God for us. Nothing could come against us. Nothing could stand between us." And it was just so to see how God's used it in these different ways has just been really powerful for us. And humbling, honestly.
We realized as we began writing songs for the church, your favorite sermon or book, you'll listen to it or read it a couple times, or it'll impact you greatly. But songs have the ability, like we listen to songs hundreds of times, if not more than that. And so realizing, I think in some ways the responsibility, but also the privilege to get to write songs that can help shape people's views and perceptions of God, and hopefully bring life and encouragement to their daily life on a regular basis.
Right, exactly. And songs will kind of ebb and flow through time and have different significance as different events happen. Wow,
that's true.
Amazing. Any last thoughts for our CCLI worship teams and worship leaders out there?
I think as worship leaders, and I would encourage you to write songs for your church. I think there's something really special and powerful about writing for your community. And we saw it in our own lives as we wrote for our small 250 person church in Fresno, California. And it was, as we began to sing those songs, it was like our congregation grabbed hold of it, and it was our corporate song. It became everyone's song together. And we saw so much shift in building culture through those moments. And we always will, and we love singing other people's songs. We sing, we sing a ton of Matt Redman songs and Phil Wickham songs and all these songs, but there is something really special about writing a song for your own community. And so I would encourage worship leaders and worship pastors to ask the Lord, what season are we going into, and begin to try and put words to that and put melodies to that and give it to your church and your congregation.
Yeah. Bryan and Katie, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching. Take care.